Hey, everybody, it's Reggie with Lawyer Interviews. We are so excited on today's episode because we are talking with Erin Morgan, who is an attorney out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We talk about her practice of law, her journey in law, as well as mental health and addiction issues that lawyers in the industry face all the time, and even her own journey of finding and seeking out help for alcoholism. So we're really excited to talk to her. She takes us through her journey as well as healing and how music has helped her with a cathartic release from the practice of law. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody, it's Reggie with Lawyer Interviews, and today we are joined by Erin Pitcher out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hi, Erin.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. We're really excited to have you. And also, we're really excited because you are like one of the prettiest singers I've seen, as far as lawyers go that are displaying their talents on social media. I've watched a bunch of your videos and you've got a gorgeous voice, and I love that you're displaying that side of you.
Thank you. That's so kind of you. I appreciate it. I've always been nervous to post those kinds of videos. Something I've always people know I like music and they know I like to sing. And I'm a regular at karaoke, but it's another thing to put it out there on social media. So, but I love it. So I appreciate the compliments.
Very cool. Well, we'll get into the music in a second, but first I want to ask, I know you've experienced a different kind of array of practice areas. So I'd love for you to tell our viewers exactly where you've practiced and the different kinds of law.
Awesome. So I started out, I've been practicing since 2015. I am out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So my first job out of law school was at the district attorney's office. So specifically the Second Judicial District Attorney's Office here in New Mexico. It's the largest district attorney's office that we do have here. I started out prosecuting just misdemeanors, so run-of-the-mill DWIs and domestic violence types cases. And then I moved and spent the majority of my time doing felony crimes, specifically prosecuting high-profile repeat property and narcotics offenders. So I did a lot of that. And throughout my time there, I was the lead prosecutor on various court programs, so like their mental health court program, domestic violence repeat offenders programs, some of those different programs that were focused on rehabilitation and getting defendants the resources and tools and skills that they need to not reoffend. And so I did do a lot of that and would teach CLEs. And then after doing that for several years, I'll be honest, I got a little burnt out. It's a lot, a really hefty caseload. Lots of political pressure and media pressure, and from a mental health, I needed to take a break. So I made the switch over to doing Social Security work because I have a big passion for helping people with disabilities. I have a stepson who's developmentally disabled. I've just always done a lot of work with other students and other individuals in the community. Who are disabled, and I'm a published author on it. And so I thought this will be great. This will be a great switch. And so I moved over and I did that and was the managing attorney for the Northern New Mexico offices. My firm at the time had some different offices around New Mexico and one in Texas. So I was responsible for Albuquerque and everything north. And so I did that for a little bit, and then I switched over to doing civil litigation defense work. And what drew me to that was specifically my interest in medical malpractice. I come from a family full of doctors. I could not hack it. That's just not my jam.
I get it. I'm from a family of teachers and engineers, and they were all disappointed when I went into law.
Yeah, I remember I had to have been in second grade. I was like 7 or 8. And for the longest time, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, just like my dad and my grandfather and my aunts, uncles. I wanted to be just like them. And I remember my dad, who was a surgeon. He took me to work and, showed me different procedures, and I got to watch different procedures and surgeries. And I learned very quickly it was not.
It's not for everybody, just like law. It is not for everybody.
Yeah, that for me. Now, I love medical malpractice work in that I love the science and I love learning about it. I can look at the photos of things, I can look at the videos, but in person, actually, not for me. So, so, knowing that, I've come from a medical family and I do still have a big passion and interest for that, is what drew me to doing civil litigation defense work. So I could do medical malpractice defense. So I did do a lot of that. I also did a lot of catastrophic injury, wrongful death kind of cases, big construction defects cases.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I've done a lot of that. And I did also do some of your run of the mill blue car, red car accident cases and premises liability stuff. But I did that for several years. And then I decided I also needed a break from that because I don't like billable hours. I think
man.
Everyone can
you
agree.
Just hit the golden nugget with me. I can go on for about 9 years about how much I like billable hours. They're the worst. They are the worst.
They are the worst, and then you got to look at what carrier wants what and what you can bill for what. And then they still want to cut your time. And you're just like, oh, give me a break.
Yep.
So, I decided that, too, I wanted better work-life balance, not just because of the high billable requirement, but, the stress of handling those really big, complex cases. Right. I just need something that fit in a little better with my personal life and what I'm going through, and that would allow me to better take care of my stepsons, and in particular, my youngest, the one that is developmentally disabled.
Right.
Because, I have found too that even though at the firms that I was at, I was promised some flexibility, that wasn't always the case. And
flexibility is the, it's always in,
and it's hard. And, I'm not a full-time stepmom, we have the kids here, various times of the year, but during those times that they're here, I need that flexibility. I need the ability to work from home or the ability to also work after hours and just have a little bit more. But I found that where I was at, I just wasn't getting that. It just seemed like they would promise it and it just wouldn't come through. And so I had to make a switch for me and for my family. And so now I'm doing primarily family law, employment law, and plaintiffs civil litigation work. My firm also does do cannabis law, since recreational cannabis was just allowed to be legal.
Very cool.
My firm does help with that, but I'm not personally involved in that. I'm sticking to the family law and the employment law stuff at this time.
Very cool. Yeah, it was this year, wasn't it, that it just passed in 2022?
Yeah, I think it was back in beginning of April.
Okay.
That it just passed. So, everyone's scrambling to get their grower's license and their business licenses and everything set up. So that's what my firm helps out with.
Very cool. Well, I love that you've had such a broad area or array, of different areas you've been able to dip your toes in and then practice for a number of years. And one thing you kind of mentioned is, the work-life balance. We kind of discussed that a little bit and how that can really take a toll on your mental health. And, I've been vocal online, I have, mental health issues and, I definitely, the practice of law and the stress of it has not helped those. It's not. It's a very stressful job, especially, litigation. We live and die by these scheduling orders, and how do you make time for you? And so I would love to talk to you more about how your mental health was affected by these stressful jobs.
Absolutely. And I agree. I think, mental health is a topic that, needs to still be talked about more. And I think only in recent years has it really become more acceptable to talk about it. But I feel like in the legal profession, it's even less talked about and it's swept under the rug. And there's still this traditional old school mindset that you just have to bill a ton of hours and work always comes first. Mm-hmm. And that can be really hard. And I think when I first came out of school, I was pretty naive, as we all are. We don't have all of the experience and the knowledge that we have now,
Right.
looking back. And I do remember them talking to me, even in law school, and then when I got sworn in, and then at CLEs, they'll talk about mental health and well-being and issues with substance abuse and things like that. And it's like I heard it, but I didn't hear it. I didn't really recognize it. And I thought, I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be fine. But in hindsight, looking back, I think that the stress of the job, even starting from my first job at the DA's office, I got what I thought was good at compartmentalizing and not letting it really affect me. In
Right.
hindsight, I know that that's not true. It was, and it slowly started manifesting itself with being extremely anxious and constantly second guessing myself, waking up in the middle of the night thinking, did I forget to file that, or what's that deadline, or what do I have to do? And then from there, having all the sleep disruptions, it really messes with everything.
It does.
And
It does.
it just started snowballing to the point that I was drinking more and more and more. And it would be, I get off of work, have a few drinks, and over time, it became unmanageable for me. And I've always had a history with depression and anxiety.
Mhm.
Um,
So do I.
and
And I have too. So I completely understand.
yeah, so I've always had an issue with that. So it's like I came into this profession with those issues, and I didn't really do anything beneficial to help that. And so then when I was drinking, I was doing it to calm my nerves, to allow my brain to shut off, to go to sleep. And then over time, the drinking became too much. And then when COVID hit, just like many, many people all over the world, my mental health took a nosedive.
Right.
And I didn't even realize it in that moment, because looking back, I can remember how I was okay with being at home. I might make jokes about it, but I was okay with being at home and isolated and all of that. In hindsight, I think all of that really affected me. And so that's when my alcoholism really took off,
Right.
was in COVID.
Completely
And
understand too, being isolated like that. And then, like you said, compartmentalizing and maybe not realizing that depression's getting worse. But I think that is so relatable to probably so many people watching who went through
yeah,
that.
absolutely. I think it's so easy to get caught up in just how busy our schedules are and how demanding our jobs are. People always talk to me about, oh, let's go hang out, or you have time off, or you're on vacation, don't worry about work. And it's like, I don't know how to do that because I don't ever feel like there's time off. There's always an email, there's always a phone call I have to return, or a deadline coming up. And so in the past, I didn't have a good way of dealing with that. It was just like, I'm not going to acknowledge it. Let me just have a few drinks in the evening to wind down. And then after a while, especially in COVID, it was like, okay, well, end of the work day. I mean, it's early, but hey, let's have some drinks. And drinks turned into, half a bottle, 3/4 of a bottle of vodka a day,
Right.
plus seltzer and things like that. And so that's what I was doing. And, I started to notice that that was an issue
Mhm.
for me. And I've always been a little concerned that alcohol could be an issue for me because there are individuals in my family who are also alcoholics.
Mhm.
My parents are not, so I was not raised around that whatsoever.
Right.
It is in my family, but I thought, okay, I'm fine. But in hindsight, I just wasn't. And so I also had that going against me as well.
Right.
And so even though people had brought up issues in the past, I had also, when I was 19, I was arrested for DWI. And at the time, everyone told me to chalk it up to the fact that I was young and dumb and in college. And well, yes, that was true. I think that was a red flag.
Right.
Way back then, even when I wasn't drinking, anywhere near the number of days or the amounts that I was. I think that was a red flag. So in COVID, when I started to notice that my drinking was going up and up and up and up, I started getting into counseling. And I was meeting with a therapist 2 to 3 times a week, plus a psychiatrist 1 to 2 times a week. And it seemed to be going okay, but I still was not able to completely stop drinking. Right. And I'd go through these periods where I'd be really good and I could just hold off and it would be fine, or I'd at least lessen the amount of drinks I had significantly. But it's a cycle, it's a disease. And so, no matter how much I tried, the answer wasn't to try and moderate, not for me.
Right.
It meant that I needed to go seek treatment because, I was making all this time for these appointments, but that wasn't enough. That plus medications, none of that was enough. And so then I checked myself into rehab over a year ago and did get help for both depression, anxiety, and alcoholism, as well as PTSD. So got help for that. And since then, I've been able to use a lot of those tools and strategies in my everyday life, and it helps my practice. And I've been able to stay, clean and sober.
Congratulations, by the way. That's amazing. That's a really cool.
Yeah. So, the mental health and the substance abuse, I think it's definitely something that I would hope that folks get more comfortable talking about. I know there's a lot of shame around. I know that's how I felt. I was very scared to go away. And it got to a point where I was like, there is no other way than me removing myself from my environment as it is now and taking myself out of it and just focusing solely on this to get better, because everything else I had tried didn't work.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is I love that you're talking about mental health and addiction as a woman in law, because like you said, I mean, in law is so interesting. We have these organizations like Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers, and we all hear all the time in law school and, at CLEs, how alcoholism, addiction issues are prevalent in our industry. But at the same time, like CLEs, dinners, luncheons, meetups, alumni events, they all center around alcohol. It's like, it's part of the profession. It's like after the hearing, you go get a drink, or after work, the whole, team gets a drink. And so I don't know if that was your experience too, but I mean, alcohol played a huge part even in law school among, kind of how they're training you, right? To be in this field.
Absolutely, 100%. I feel like, yes, it's talked about, by the state bar and the various programs and the CLEs, but I haven't experienced many women lawyers actually talking about their own personal experiences and what it looked like.
Right.
And so that was hard. I mean, because I still feel like no matter if you're a man or a woman or however you identify, I think that in the legal profession, it's still not really fully discussed and disclosed. It's just like mentioned. And then, like you said, every event, everything, there's always alcohol. It's always centered around alcohol. And that's what's confusing to me. And I think part of the legal culture too, because it's so centered around this social aspect with alcohol, then it becomes okay almost for people to drink a lot. And I know even to this day, I'll have, some of my colleagues and close friends who drink even more than I ever did at my worst, and they think it's normal and it's treated as normal. And no one talks about how, hey, this is a problem, like this is an issue. And so it was really confusing because I would see my peers and colleagues and even mentors, people I really admired who drank heavily, and like me, we all just functioned. We're just high functioning, and you just get through the day. But that's not a way to live, and that's not good for you long term. It's not good for your practice. It's not good for your clients. Right. So it's definitely something to be talked about. And I think it would be so helpful if more female attorneys who have struggled with substance abuse would speak out more. Because I feel like too, a lot of times, women still to this day are primarily the caretakers of their homes, and they have to raise kids and families and take care of the house as well. And so we have all these extra added things on top of our plate, other
Right.
than just being a lawyer. And it would be nice to hear from folks who have figured out how to work through that and balance that, and who aren't afraid to admit, look, I couldn't handle it all. I mean, I can admit I could not handle it all. I took on too much. I did not take time for my mental health or
Right.
my well-being. And the end result was me having to go to rehab for
Right.
alcohol.
And I understand that so much too. I had terrible postpartum depression, and I didn't have a substance abuse issue, but I did have like almost a nervous breakdown because the day I came home from the hospital, 2 days after giving birth, I was filing memos because I thought I had this expectation if I didn't, even if I was on maternity leave, that I would be replaceable. Or, it's like just because you can take it doesn't mean you're going to be, not penalized in some way for it. And I didn't let my body recover because I just started working again, just right away. And I had postpartum depression for almost 2 years because of it. I
Oh,
couldn't get out of it because my body was like, you never healed. And it just kept building and building and building. And it was just like, but the industry we're in, it's like, do we need to find better ways of coping, or does the industry need to change with the demands? What do you think?
I think it's probably both, right? I'm not one to say that, we don't need to take any sort of responsibility on ourselves. I think we should
Right.
always have that healthy self-reflection.
Right.
But I do think the industry needs to change. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what your experience has been, but for me, it still seems pretty traditional, very male dominant.
Yes.
Uh, Very centered around billable hours and what can you do for the firm.
Right.
I I did not believe one of my first employers who said, as a woman attorney, you are going to have to fight harder to get the same respect and same things as a man. I didn't believe her because I wasn't raised that way, and I just hadn't experienced that. But let me tell you what, when I went to do civil litigation defense, 100% true. I would see men come in and they could have been right out of school making more money than me, and they don't have the same responsibilities that I do with taking care of a family.
Right.
And so they might be able to bill more hours than me. But then there's also this culture of who can bill the most hours. And I'm competitive by nature, so it's hard for me to refrain from that. But it always gives you this looming sense of like, I could be doing more. Like
You're inadequate. Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I do think that some changes need to be made. 100%.
It's the
How we
gunners of
can
billable hours, the gunners of the billable hours. Like, I've got to do more. You're like, stop it.
that? Can we just calm it down for a minute? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it's hard, watching male employees get promotions, get promoted to partner, or get raises or bigger bonuses, and you're like, wait a second, I have a very big, difficult caseload, and just because I didn't bill, 100 hours over the requirement or whatever, my bonus is less, but I'm providing you great work and I'm still, getting everything done. It's hard. I think it is hard.
It is. And like you said, some people will turn to alcohol, substance abuse, or maybe other unhealthy, coping mechanisms, because that's what we do when we compartmentalize. And it builds up. And so I think it's so cool that you're out here sharing your journey. And I want people to check out your Instagram for sure, because you are open about it and how it's changed your life. And so I'm just curious if you don't mind sharing some of the benefits that you've experienced since being in recovery and for over a year.
Yeah. So I think there's been lots of benefits. Now, when it comes to work, the biggest thing I've noticed is just not having this extra added sense of anxiety. I'm not coming to work being like, gosh, I'm hungover. This is awful. How am I going to get through the day?
Right.
I'm not second guessing myself near as much. I feel like I have a clear head and I'm able to focus and get the work done. Because, part of what alcohol does or any of these substances, it kind of disrupts everything. It
Right.
dysregulates you. And so you're not able to properly handle situations because you're just so out of whack.
Right.
And so, having this sobriety for this long, it's definitely helped with that and staying on, task and being more scheduled and just feeling more confident about my work without this looming thing behind me thinking about when is my next drink or, gosh, I'm hungover. Does anyone know?
Right.
You don't need that stuff. And so that's been probably the biggest thing is just seeing a dramatic shift in my ability to just perform my job. Not that I had ever had any complaints or any issues performing my job before, but now I can actually do it like I was meant to, like I want to, and like I should be.
I think that's a common misconception too with like alcoholism and especially people in high functioning alcoholism or high stress careers. I think there's like this stigma. People think, oh, they're going to be stumbling and drunk from the night before. And, it's like, here's the thing that's not how it always shows up. If it's a problem for you and you feel like you can do better, it's probably a problem, and that's I know so many high functioning alcoholics and they don't always smell like alcohol, look like they're drunk, but it is a problem. So I love that you're talking about like for you, the work day was better. You weren't focused on it, because it's not necessarily going to manifest showing up to others as much as it is to you.
Exactly. And I remember when I came out to some close friends of mine who I had already been telling them that I was a little worried about my alcohol consumption. And they were like, no, you don't have a problem. It's fine. Like, yeah, you might have a little too much when we all go out or what, but you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told them that I was going to rehab, a couple of them were like, you don't need to go. I don't get why you're going. And they were irritated with me or seemingly irritated with me because they just didn't understand because I didn't fit that stereotype
Right.
of fall down, drunk, homeless, getting into lots of legal trouble. And, my life was not in shambles by any means. But like you said, it has to do with how you feel. If it's a problem for you, it's a problem. And for me, it was a problem. And it was a problem for my spouse. It's a problem for my family. And so it had to be addressed, regardless of what outside folks thought or if I fit into some nice, neat little box.
Right.
So, absolutely.
Now I also want to know how music, helped you with your, stress in law, and then also maybe part of your recovery journey, because I love that you share your music and it seems like it's something you are very passionate about. How has that played a role in your recovery and then practice?
Absolutely. So I have always been really big into music. My dad got me into music when I was really little, started playing piano at the age of 4, and then just started playing more instruments and started just singing on my own and doing things. And I loved it. But when I got into law school is when I stopped playing a lot of music. I think that I just didn't make time for it, just like I didn't make time for my mental health before.
Right.
It got pushed to the side. And so I really stopped doing all of that for a long time. And even the majority of my career thus far, it wasn't until I went to rehab that they really talked to me a lot about making sure that you do self-care and you're taking care of yourself. And so for me, self-care looks like getting back to those things that make me passionate and happy and that I love doing, and that's music. And so I started, when I came back from rehab, my dad was already involved in a band because he's in my band and he's the lead guitarist. So
I love that. It's awesome.
I love it. It's so cheesy and corny, but I love it. I just adore the time I get to spend with my dad doing that.
That's awesome.
So, he said, why don't you come sing with us a couple times? And I did. and then somehow I just ended up doing it all the time. So that's how I got into that part. But, I was making a very intentional act of either listening to music, singing every day. A therapist had talked to me about how singing is really good for helping with depression and anxiety and things like that, because it stimulates your, and I'm going to butcher this probably.
You're good.
It stimulates your vasovagal nerve. And so there is some science behind it about how singing and music really does help, because I like knowing all those little details, all the science behind it.
Right. Right.
So, I just made it a really intentional thing. And so now, we'll perform a show or two every month. There's another surgeon that's in the band that works with my dad. And
okay, so it is a band of surgeons and lawyers. Like, this is the coolest.
Yeah. So get this. So we have two surgeons. So one is the drummer. His name is Mike, and he's responsible for doing all the kidney transplants here in New Mexico, and like chief of is it nephrology? I think it's nephrology. I always get it wrong. Sorry, Mike, if you end up watching this. I always get it wrong. And then you have my dad. He's a general surgeon, and he's also the executive physician for our only level 1 trauma hospital here in New Mexico. God. And then our bassist, he actually used to be a part of a former band that used to tour all over, like an actual signed band. So he used to do that. And then we have our lead singer, who is a local singer-songwriter, and he's phenomenal. So between all of us, you have a band full of doctors and lawyers. We're half of us are nerds.
Yeah, but so you're music professionals, you're lawyers, you're doctors. If you guys go on tour and a catastrophic accident happens, you're all covered.
Got it covered. We got you.
That's hilarious. That's so cool.
So yeah, we do that. We practice, a couple times a month, and we have our shows. We actually have one tomorrow. And, it's just a lot of fun, and it's just so important. I can't stress this enough to folks. I know that the legal community and the culture is very work centric, and it's really difficult to find time in your day. But if you can find time, 15 minutes, 30 minutes a day, just to take time for you. It could be you going in another room and just laying down and having quiet time. It could be getting up and going for a walk. Just something to take a break, to have your mind actually have to take a break from what you're doing. It helps so much. It really does. And so that's what music does for me, is it gives me that ability to kind of escape a little bit, and to do something that makes me happy, that's not legal related and not, centered around, all my responsibilities at home.
Right.
It's just something that is just for me, and that I get to share with others. And I love to do that, and to make people happy, and, hopefully make them laugh and, have a good time. And so that's what I get to do. And so if anyone has a hobby or a passion or something that maybe they haven't picked up in a while because they've been too busy with their lawyering,
right.
I really encourage you to make that a priority. Start small though. You don't have to start big. You just start. Just schedule it in if you have to.
Make the time, even if it's, like you said, 5-15 minutes, just do it. Just do it. And Erin has been so kind to let us show a clip of her singing. And so we're going to show that at the very, very end. Before we go and break, Erin, can you tell us where we can find you on social media, and also your band, so that people in New Mexico can come out and see you?
Absolutely. So you can find me primarily on Instagram. So my Instagram is Erin, ERIN_Morgan, MORGAN. And then my band is also on Instagram. They are Fretnot the Band. So FRETNOUGHT, and then the band. All one word. That's on Instagram. And then if you've searched for us on Facebook, we're just under Fretnot. And I don't have a public page anymore on Facebook. I do keep my Facebook private just for friends and family, but Instagram is wide open, public, and I really encourage anyone, if you have any questions, want to hear more about my sobriety and recovery and lawyering, or anything else that you see on my page, my singing, any of that, feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Erin, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for watching Lawyer Interviews. We'll see you next time.